is we'll have an FBI report this week.
McConnell says the results will be available to all senators. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says
there ought to be adequate time for people to review the report before they're called on to vote.
Republican leaders accuse Democrats of moving the goalposts to delay confirmation.
Fox's Jared Halpern, President Trump repeating that theme in a Tuesday night campaign rally in Mississippi.
A man's life is in tatters. A man's life is shattered. His wife is shattered. His daughters, who are beautiful, incredible young kids. They destroy people. They want to destroy people. These are really evil people.
President in Mississippi to campaign for the re-election of Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. The White House is dismissing a report in the New York Times that claims President Trump and his family years ago avoided millions of dollars in taxes and more than $1 billion in gifts from their parents. The Times says the state of New York is investigating. An attorney representing the president says the story is 100% false and highly defamatory. It's all over in the National League wildcard game on a strikeout.
Now it's time! The Colorado Rockies have gone on the road and defeated the Cubs to move on to the division series. Stunned silence on the north side tonight.
The call on ESPN, the Rockies advance to the National League Division Series. They'll play the Milwaukee Brewers. Fox News, fair and balanced.
For over 30 years, Sanford Technology Group has been helping companies throughout Guam and Micronesia with their payroll, time and attendance, networking, and other information technology services. Our online integrated payroll and time and attendance solution provides the workforce management tools and expertise to make your business more efficient and employee-friendly. For more information, visit Sanford Technology at 335 South Marine Corps Drive or call us at 647-0220 to schedule a demo today.
Grilled salmon, petite sirloin. Can't decide.
What are you doing?
Making my top 10 list of favorite dishes at Ruby Tuesday.
You really need to get a hobby.
But I can't decide. There's no way I can narrow down so many classic dishes to just 10.
Then it's a good thing Ruby Tuesday did it for you.
It's the all-time favorites menu at Ruby Tuesday Guam. We took our most popular dishes and put them on one great menu for only $14.99. Hickory pork chop, Parmesan shrimp pasta, prime loco moco. 10 top sellers at one great price. Pick your favorite for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
It's just in, a volcano has erupted on the central Indonesian island of Sulawesi. It's the same island where an earthquake and tsunami struck last Friday. No additional details on that volcano so far. Aid convoys are still struggling to reach the areas impacted by that earthquake in Indonesia.
There are now more than 60,000 people here in Palu without homes, food, water or fuel. Only in the last 24 hours has it begun slowly to get through. The looting in the town is understandable. They need the food and the water. And they all complain that it's not getting through. For so many, though, it is too late. The piles of body bags hold some dignity and are vital, too, to prevent disease from spreading. Mass burials have now taken place for the hundreds whose bodies have been recovered.
Sky News correspondent Mark Stone. Officially, there are 1,234 people known dead in the Indonesia earthquake and tsunami, but several agencies are reporting that number now exceeds 1,300. The official government update is expected in about an hour from now. The all clear sounded Tuesday at Senator Ted Cruz's Houston campaign headquarters after a package containing a suspicious white powder was delivered to the building. The Chicago police officer charged with murder in the 2014 shooting death of black teenager Laquan McDonald has taken the stand in his own defense. Officer Jason Van Dyke telling the court he opened fire when the teenager kept advancing toward him while waving a knife.
I saw him extend out a knife, flicking it towards the side.
And how far away from you was Laquan McDonald when he flipped out that knife?
It's probably about 20 feet.
Officer Jason Van Dyke turning defiant when prosecutors referred to a video showing him exiting his vehicle and beginning to fire even as McDonald appeared to veer away from the police. McDonald was shot a total of 16 times. That trial continues on Wednesday. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News Radio.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Call the experts at Guam Hearing Doctors if you're worried about your hearing. The evaluation is simple and painless.
Cheese curls and hot sauce, pantosta and coffee. Great alone, but better together. Here's another perfect pair for you. Docomo Pacific has created the Better Together Bundle, combining 2 great services for one low price. Get unlimited local talk, text, and 20 gigs of data, plus unlimited home internet speed up to 20 megabits for $109 per month. You also get free installation and a Galaxy A8 Plus when you sign up today. Mobile plus online. From Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply. Call 688-KRC store for details.
The Bob Klitsky Show is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Taste the sizzle at Chili's with our new fajita flavors. Our signature fajitas are served with sliced bell peppers, caramelized onions, topped with chipotle garlic butter, and chopped cilantro. Build your fajita with over 16 ounces of tender grilled chicken, juicy steak, and a dozen pieces of seasoned grilled shrimp in the family fajita trio. All served with warm flour tortillas and fresh toppings like mixed cheese, guacamole, salsa, and pico de gallo. Experience bold, sizzling fajita flavors only at Chili's. More life happens here.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitsky, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitsky.
Now, well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, welcome back to Tall Tales. Here we are. Ishmael's here. Dee is here, and Dee is starting out by telling us that she has discovered a shocker. She said Ray Tenorio didn't show. Now, there's a shocker. Yeah, you could have knocked me over with a feather, Dee. Absolutely right. So we're going to get into that when we get to the card. The first item on the card is going to be People versus Tenorio, and I've got my own take on that. We got some other interesting stuff on the card. We're going to go back to the Kavanaugh matter a little bit, and the CLTC versus... CLTC versus a sense of responsibility. And I've also got the Ovita Nauta matter at versus DEPCOR. So stay tuned. We've got a really interesting card coming up, and I've got probably a really interesting call from Henry Simpson. Hello, Henry.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
Couldn't be better.
Good, good. I wanted to let you know I'm part of your great international listening audience.
Well, I appreciate that.
Also want to thank you for your help with the racetrack in the past and let you know that our 20-year license that we got back when you were a senator has actually run out, and we're on a month-to-month right now, and we've got the chance to get a 50-year lease. We've been working on it with Senator Tom Adda, and we're going to have a public hearing on October 10th at 5 o'clock. And as with all things in politics, I wanted to let everybody know that the more people we get down there, the more bodies that show up to. It's the Guam International Raceway, and the group that runs it is the Guam Racing Federation. It's a nonprofit group that is put together, from all of the different racing aspects. I came from motorcycles and off-road racing. A bunch of the guys came from drag racing. There's new guys in now with the sports car racing and drifting. There's all kinds of new interest in using the property up there. We just recently had, just this weekend, the Trench Mudder. That is like an endurance obstacle race, 6.6 miles going through the mud, over pipes, up and over containers and nets and ropes, and it was really quite challenging. And then it was in the middle of the rain, so it was the kind of thing that added another obstacle to it. It was really something that people seemed to really enjoyed it. Because there was a storm, some of the safety workers were called back by the military, and so I volunteered. I was on the station where they were flipping tires. And by the time they got to me to flip those tires, a lot of people looked pretty tired, but they were really having fun.
Sounds interesting, Henry. You know, I have a mental image of you, an old mental image of you hanging from a hang glider.
Yeah. Yeah, that used to be something I really enjoyed doing. I just don't bounce so good anymore.
Okay. So, okay, well, it's a very interesting tale that you're telling about the Guam International Raceway. We won't invoice you for the advertising time.
Okay. Just let everybody know that, you know, it just, as a former senator, the more people that are interested in it, the more that the senators pay attention to it. And so we would really like to have a big turnout there. It's 5 o'clock in the evening till 9 o'clock, and the more people that can come and sign up and get involved in it, the better chance we have of getting a really positive result with our racetrack.
What day is it again?
It's next Wednesday on the 10th. At 5 o'clock, starts at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're asking everybody that has any interest in it at all to come out.
Well, probably the attendance at 5 will be a little bit on the sparse side, but it'll pick up after 6, right, Henry?
I think so, but we plan on trying to get a few down there early so we can get our testimonies in and on the record. And
well, that means you're asking people to make a pretty substantial sacrifice because they're going to have to miss at least an hour of Tall Tales if they're down there at 5. So there might be some dedicated folks who'll do that for you.
You know what? We may have to put a speaker up down there outside the legislature.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your help in the past too. I know you helped Senator Casper Bauer when he was doing the initial legislation for the racetrack, and on the other laws along the way that it took to make the thing work. I wanted to make a suggestion. I know I listened a lot to the folks talking about the Chamorro Land Trust, and I had the great experience to actually work with Angel Santos a little bit over trying to get the truck because it was Chamorro Land Trust property, and his point of view was, it's going to be really hard for him to support letting a group use Chamorro Land Trust property when there weren't any Chamorro people yet in a house on Chamorro Land Trust property at that time. And we sat down and talked about it and said, the money derived from what we're doing will help them do surveying, help them do roads, help them do all the other various things that need to be done. And he agreed and became a proponent of the racetrack, and we started talking about his 57 Chevy that he used to race down at the old Harmon drag strip.
Mm.
And so there was, Senator Casper, when he was first starting to run, he asked me, what community thing do you think I should work on? And I said, when you're out there talking to people, ask them would they like to see a legal drag strip? Would they like to see a motorsports complex? And he came back and told me later it was just overwhelming. Everybody really wanted to see that happen. And, you know, what we've done hasn't stopped all illegal drag racing, but it stopped like 95% of it. And that saved the police department a lot of money and just saved a lot of people a lot of aggravation and maybe a few lives. I don't know, but it's been really well received. And I again want to thank you for your support of it back in the day.
Okay, Henry. Well, I wish you well, and I'm sorry about having to run interference next Wednesday at 5 p.m., but the old saying is the show must go on, right?
Yeah, tell them to come down. You can, I'll call you and you can rally them.
Okay, Henry. Good talking to you again.
Thank you.
So long. So Henry Simpson knows the power of tall tales when it comes to getting the word out to our international radio listening audience. Just like Dee and Ishmael and Rico and Juanita know that if they want to have a little influence, they pop up on Tall Tales Facebook. And I also want to welcome Sanford Technology and the Hearing Doctors. Glad to have you guys on board with Tall Tales. You certainly add something very important to the program. So we cycled from the right to keep and bear arms to the right to drive your automobile at excessive speed on a drag strip. But I guess we better go from there over to Zemi-E-Kotny, which you'll recall, Lee Stolley, is that portion of the program that is our local equivalent. We call it Zemi-E-Kotny, our local equivalent of Meet the Press. We only have 2 editorials today. For some reason, PNC didn't run a pro-Lou Leon Guerrero editorial last night. I'll keep an eye on them, though. So the Daily News editorial, our view, military should help cover the cost of closing the ORDOT landfill. And of course, they make a good point in the editorial. The military started the ORDOT dump before World War II. We aren't able to try to recover from the Japanese because of we were subrogated to whatever debts the Japanese had by the peace treaty. So we probably can't make a claim against the Japanese. And then the Navy continued to run the to run the dump after World War II, I suppose at least up until August 1st, 1950, when the Organic Act kicked in. So there was some really good news here. The government of Guam filed suit, I thought, in a very untimely manner, filed suit, but the U.S. government moved to dismiss on the basis that the statute had run, and a visiting judge denied the motion. So as we sit here, we're still in court. I haven't been able to analyze the judge's decision because she hasn't put out a written decision yet. But when she does, of course, we'll spend a few minutes on it, and you can make some notes in the margins of your Law and Order notebook. So I pretty much agree with everything the Daily News says, and I'll give them credit for saying something that's important. The call to action here is this. The obvious solution is for the federal and local governments to reach a compromise, one in which each side shares in the responsibility and the cost of closing the dump and monitoring the site in the years to come. Instead of wasting more time in court, the U.S. military needs to do what's right and pay its fair share. So, pretty good editorial. There's only one place, I think, where the Daily News went a little bit too far. Near the bottom of the first page, they say, they quote our Attorney General, and then they say, Barrett Anderson is right. Now, I don't know, they probably could have written the editorial without gratuitously throwing that in there, don't you think, Real Joe Cruz?
You're right, sir.
Yeah, and they actually referred to Barrett Anderson by name instead of the way PNC does it with the third-person singular neuter pronoun. At least the Daily News didn't call her it like Janella did in that PNC newscast. So that's the Daily News editorial. And then as far as the Post is concerned, I have to, before I get into this, I got to tell you that in a sense, there are two kinds of people in the world. There are, and I'm going to use the word man, remembering that man at one time referred to both males and females. It's super politically incorrect to use it that way nowadays. That's why I guess I continue to do it. But when it comes down to separating people into groups, there are two basic kinds of people, dog men and cat men. And I have to admit that I am a dog man. How about you, Real Joe Cruz? Do you want to fess up here?
Yeah, yes, I'm absolutely a dog man.
A dog man, okay. So, you know, dogs, for one thing, you know, there's an old saying that I've added my own twist to, and that is that man is the dog's best friend. And the dog realizes that man is his best friend and does everything he can to stay on the right side of a man when a person, a master or whatever, an owner walks into the room, the dog shows his approval by wagging his tail and perhaps making approving sounds, etc. So I really like dogs. Cats, on the other hand, seem to be incapable of showing any affection for humans at all. They seem to want to. Scat, move away, etc. So Ishmael says he lost sound on the radio. I'm breaking into my own rant here. Anybody else having a problem with that? I guess if you are, you wouldn't be able to hear me say this, right? Okay, Ishmael said the sound is back. Okay, good. So anyhow, I really like dogs, and I grew up with a dog named Napoleon, and when I was a little kid, I really loved that dog, and I still really like dogs. Cats, not so much. So the Post is kind of appealing to one of my biases, and they're saying help with tips on shooting of dogs on private property. And starts out, kudos to Gaines' proactive role in letting the public know that there has been a series of shooting attacks on pet dogs on private property. It's not a very well-worded sentence there, Post. Shooting attacks? I think maybe what you're trying to say is that people have been shooting at dogs, right? After Gaines' two recent press releases announcing the shooting attacks on dogs, the nonprofit has received $1,000 for reward money. The first dog that was shot was named Pugwa, and a golden retriever was shot with a BB gun, and a Rottweiler was shot in the chest and killed a few weeks ago. Friday morning, a small dog was found dead in a yard from gunshot wounds in the same neighborhood. And Cyrus Lure, the president of Gaines, said someone trespassed onto private property with a loaded gun and brutally executed a family pet. This violent person is still on the loose, etc. These shootings at private property also risk people's lives. Well, if it were on public property, Cyrus, it wouldn't be any better. Shooting at dogs on public property is even more dangerous than doing it on private property. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So and then there's a phone number here for Gain and for Crime Stoppers, and the report of a suspect. A man made threats against Pugwa and other neighborhood dogs a day before the attack. Gain describes him as a 6 foot, 200 to 230 pound Chamorro man with tattoos and short black hair. He was last seen between 4 and 5 p.m. in Jigo near the mayor's office. So I may have to swear out the Jigo's Tall Tales posse here if this continues. So this is a pretty good editorial here. It really kind of tugs at my heartstrings, being the dog person that I am. And Rico has helped me out here and says that, what was it that Rico said? He said, cats want to be the boss, dogs just want to be your friend, right? Good call, Rico. And let's see, I had another interesting comment here. Well, we'll go on. So, well put together editorial, and then I suppose that the newspapers are now developing some intel as to what rings the bell of the guy who makes the judgments here on Zemi Cotney, the guy with that blue pencil who hands out the stars. So they're probably trying to do some analysis and trying to figure out, how do we get on his good side so we get the blue star? Well, the Post figured it out here, right about dogs, because I like dogs. And then they went for a slam dunk here because there is a citation in here that said, Dr. Thomas Poole, Guam's territorial veterinarian, states an autopsy shows that Pugwa likely died from a large caliber bullet, probably from a handgun, 9mm or larger. So they're invoking the name of an expert who has made something of a name for himself. In fact, 2 names for himself with the real Joe Cruz, right? Real Joe Cruz? You remember Tom, what was his name, Tom?
Tom Poole?
Tom Poole, yeah.
I'll never forget.
Yeah. I told, I suggested to the real Joe Cruz that we might bring this up, and he said he was going to waive his appearance on Tall Tales.
my hearing is not as good as it should be, considering I work in radio.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they call on the phone, I have to ask a few times what their name is.
So he borrowed a page from Ray Tenorio's book and said, I'm going to waive my appearance on Tall Tales this afternoon, but that was pretty easily denied. So tough call today, one that really appeals to my biases, and then one that has an adequate call to action. So I guess I have to try to be fair and impartial here. And much as it stings a little bit, the Daily News gets the coveted blue star. Now, I suspect that the Daily News is going to write an editorial about dogs tomorrow. And if they really want to go for it, they'll quote Dr. Thomas Poole, the territorial veterinarian, in their editorial. So that's it for Zemi Cotney today. Only 2 editorials. Again, the PNC didn't run an editorial last night, so we're down to just 2 editorials today. So after this short break here, we're going to come back to The People versus Ray Tenorio.
John Gibson, digging up history. The president who didn't realize he'd been nominated because he wouldn't pay postage due. That story after this. Let's talk heirloom sheets and towels from Redland Cotton in Alabama. First, the family farm, growing the finest cotton in the world. The spinning, the looming, every step made in America, right down to the cutting and sewing. Sheets designed from a long-lost 1920s weave. The softest, most comfortable, longest-lasting sheets you've ever slept on. The Redland family, dedicated to America and linens you'll treasure. Check out redlandcotton.com for America's linen. Redland cotton.com. Back to my story. It was 1848. Zachary Taylor was a war hero for defeating Santa Anna in the war on Mexico. Living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, he was annoyed that people were sending him fan mail short of the correct postage, which he was expected to pay. He told the postmaster, if it's postage due, put it in the dead letter box. What he didn't know, in that box was a letter the Whig Party had nominated him for president, and they hadn't heard back. Word of the nomination reached him weeks later by newspapers. He went to collect the official letter, shocked to find he owed $7 whole in fees and fines, over $100 today, all on postage due of only a penny. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Yesterday, we began to discuss the winning mindset needed by effective bosses. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, let's talk again about 12 things that good bosses believe.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point. And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitsky, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Well, Dr. Tom Poole, I'm going to give you your cue.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge, very much. I just wanted to, before we leave this topic, to remind everyone that we have rewards out for information leading to the arrest, and then other reward leading to the conviction of whoever it is that has been killing these dogs in Jigo. Gain already has $1,000, as you probably know, but my Rotary Club has come up so far with $1,500 additional. The beautiful Phil Flores came up with $500 on his own. So we're very grateful, and I believe that there are people that know about this, and we hope that a reward will help them to step forward. So if anyone wants to contribute, they can contact GAIN, and I'll give that telephone number. It's 653-4246. And donate anything. Donate $5. Donate anything. I hope it'll help us catch this miscreant.
Good call, Tom. I thank you very much for appreciating that. And this is a serious matter. I've read too many studies that say that people who are cruel to animals are often also cruel to human beings. So this person who's out there shooting these dogs is certainly a bad dude that we need to get our hands on, correct?
Yes, sir, that's absolutely correct. And you're right, that's very well established, that the people that are wife beaters and child beaters and that sort of thing are very often the same people that are abusive to animals. So it's good that we know about these people and get an eye on them first, so that whenever they do, they commit their next crime, when they do beat a child or something, they don't walk in there and say, oh, it's a one-off, I'm not that kind of person. Yes, you are. We already know what you are. So I think we really need to bend every effort to try to catch this guy.
Okay, well, you can count on me bringing this to the attention of our international radio listening audience from time to time, Tom.
Thank you, Judge, so much. Bye now.
So long. So I guess what we need to do here, Real Joe Cruz, is pool our resources, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, going back to the People versus Ray Tenorio, Brad said, as a good people versus Ray Tenorio, this ought to be good. Tuned into Facebook Live at the right time. Well, you know, I got to tell you, Brad, that the right time to tune is between 1600 and 1800 in the afternoon, and between 06 and 10 in the morning. You can't go wrong with those two times. I'm of course a little partial to 1600, having to be here myself at that time, But picking up with Ray Tenorio, now Brad has shared something that I wasn't aware of. He said that Ray has got to visit probation office within 24 hours to discuss some things, present himself at the Ganya headquarters in 72 hours for processing to include prints and mugshot. So Brad queries, will he have executive security with him every step of the day? And, of course, my sarcastic comment to that would be, no, they'll be standing under the nearest Fiesta shelter with their hands in each other's pockets, like they did on that video that PNC captured of executive security in action. When he says he's gone to visit the probation office, I need to issue a little bit of a correction that, you know, that people use that term too loosely. Within the probation division of the Superior Court, there is a pretrial services office. So when a person has been arraigned and released on his own recognizance, or charged and released on his own recognizance, that means that he has to report to pretrial services, and it's those people that ride herd on people who have been charged but have not yet been to trial. Probation can only start after something, either a conviction or something that looks a lot like a conviction. And then Ted Ogwahe says that he must have checked in, probably interviewed at the courthouse outside the probation office. So I missed that part. Of course, I've been on the radio here since 4 o'clock, and I had to drive down and I had to do a little critique of Rush's program to make sure that he's properly lined up with the tall tale's political philosophies, and of course he always is. But I was going to opine about his not showing up for his hearing, and I guess I will say what I was going to say and then have to perhaps amend, correct, or supplement tomorrow after I've been able to see the TV news of him reporting to the pretrial services office. So my analysis was that he didn't want to show up at his own arraignment, and the I suppose the acerbic way to express it is that it's so embarrassing that he doesn't want to show his face at the courthouse. And I think there's probably something to that. Knowing that he showed his face at the courthouse, there would be cameras and microphones waiting for him, and everyone would want to ask him for the 400th time the same questions that they asked him not long after the Glock party occurred. And as a matter of criminal law, it kind of doesn't matter. He doesn't have to show up for that arraignment. There's no legal reason that he has to. And by not showing up, he doesn't legally prejudice himself. He doesn't put himself at a disadvantage. But this is a political season, and optics are extremely important. So my sense was that he wouldn't want to have his picture taken anywhere around the courthouse because people are going to make associations consciously, and if they don't make them consciously, they would make them unconsciously. So at least the unconscious association would be, well, if he had to go to court for a criminal case, well, criminal case, court, he must have done something wrong. Maybe they should punish him or something like that. So that was the optics that I saw. Brad tells us that the PNC is camped in the Ganya headquarters waiting for him. They did report about the next steps. PNC News interview not too long ago. Well, again, I'm going to have to take a pass on that. I'm certainly appreciative of our Tall Tales field workers like Tedo and Brad for keeping us up to date on what's going on here. That's one of the real strengths of Tall Tales. We can't do everything back there in the Tall Tales think tank. We've got tremendous resources, but we can't, when we're on the air, we can't spare any field workers to go out there and gather up this news like Tedo and Brad did. So thank you very much. Can we give them a round of applause there, Real Joe Cruz? Boy, is that the best we can do? Yeah. Okay, well, we really are appreciative of the field work that you guys did. So that's my sense on Ray Tenorio. The news reports are that he waived his right to a speedy trial. Which probably has very little importance as far as the criminal proceedings are concerned. I would have thought, again, for the optics, that it might have been well for him to say, yes, I want a speedy trial. I want to get this over with as fast as I can so that I could come forward and prove my innocence. But I guess his strategy is a little bit different. Tedo says someone video the arraignment in the courtroom without the judge's knowledge. That person can get in trouble too. It was posted on Facebook. Well, that's interesting. So even though Tenorio didn't show up, it's still he's still the top item on the card for today. And, of course, every time his name pops up like this, then the news story, the way news stories are written, it has to lay out the entire story going all the way back to the Glock party, because the journalistic convention is that I suppose we would hope that everyone follows a story from beginning to end, but, of course, that doesn't happen. And there are some people that would pick up that story today and not know anything at all about it. And if the story only said Tenorio didn't show up for his own arraignment, it wouldn't make much sense. So the convention is that the news outlet will lay out at least a summary of all of the events that led up to today's news. So every time Tenorio's name pops up, the whole story is told again, which probably doesn't do him that much good. Probably the biggest advantage that he has in the last couple days would be that the Post editorial writers were so naive. This is actually a disadvantage. It's an advantage for Lou that they were so naive that they forgot about NIMBY and pretextual testimony. And then Ray had the editorial from PNC News yesterday. So these are not going to be pleasant days for candidate Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio. So I'm going to move from there back to Kavanaugh versus the Supreme Court and others. I just have one interesting item here on this, and then we'll go to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, which will take a little bit of discussion. I have we're going to have a little question here. I'm going to throw it out. See if anybody can figure this out. This is kind of a little exercise to see if you're thinking and if you can use the internet to your advantage. And I'm going to give you a name, Ralph Buchsbaum, and it's spelled B-U-C-H-S-B-A-U-M. B-U-C-H-S-B-A-U-M. Ralph Buchsbaum. And the question is, why is Bob going to send Jeff Flake a copy of Ralph Buchsbaum's 1939 book? Is that too complicated? Why is Bob going to send Jeff Flakey a copy of Ralph Buchsbaum's 1939 book? So when you figure out the answer, just post it on Facebook, and Real Joe Cruz is going to work out some sort of sound effect here to give you the appropriate recognition. And then I have to apologize to Jeff Flake. Yesterday, I identified him as Jeff S. Flake and asked the Real Joe Real Joe Cruz, if he knew what the S stood for. Do you still remember Real Joe Cruz?
Snow?
Yeah, Snowflake. But actually, I still don't have Jeff's name correct, because there really is a Y on the end of his name, I think, and I haven't been pronouncing the Y. So he's really Jeff Flakey. So where's that drum roll there, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah, that's not the one I was thinking of, you know. The play on words, drum roll, so to speak. But anyhow, we'll skip over that. So I have an interesting article here that I picked up on Town Hall. It's one of the 25 conservative emails that I receive every day to counteract the 3 or 4 left-wing emails that I read just to kind of see what the other side is up to. It's kind of disappointing, but you'll recall that Jeff's mind was made up, was remade on the Kavanaugh matter when somebody blocked the door of two somebodies blocked the door of an elevator. Jeff went on record as saying, "I'm going to vote in the Judiciary Committee to report the Kavanaugh confirmation out to the floor." And then later on, he was cornered in the elevator by a couple of people who ranted at him. And then he changed his mind and backed off and said, well, I'm going to ask that there be an FBI investigation. And, of course, this played right into the Democrats' hands because they don't care about the confirmation process. All they want to do is drag this out as long as they can. And I can't drag this out any longer because the Real Joe is playing Dave Brubeck's Take 5. So I'm going to take a short break here.
Security Title is honored to join in sponsoring Ray Gibson on The Point. My name is Alicia Blas from Agate, and this is where I start my day, listening to the voices of our community and sharing thoughts about issues that affect all of us. It all boils down to our people and our land. Putehi Igomamu. Protect your home. When purchasing or refinancing your home, remember to call the professionals at Security Title, just like you call Ray Gibson in the morning.
Hey, Real Joe, I had a caller on the line, and before you could put it through, the caller hung up. And I'm always curious when that happened because I really like it when people call in. It makes Tall Tales a lot easier. I don't have to sit here and jabber for 2 straight hours. And I always appreciate the help. And a lot of times our callers have really interesting things to share with us. So I'm just curious, what did that guy or that gal or that person say?
Well, the most recent one said that you made a mistake when you said someone unconsciously thought, when you should have said subconsciously thought. when you were talking about the whole court thing.
Okay. Well, all right. I stand corrected. In someone's subconscious, right?
Yes.
All right.
And then the other caller said that there's two types of people in the world. Two types of people in the world.
Didn't I? Isn't that what I said? That there are two types of people in the world?
Yeah.
And he agreed, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are two types of people in the world.
All right. And he identified them as?
The ones that believe there are two types of people in the world and the ones that don't.
Okay. Well, that's the kind of sense of humor that we really appreciate here on Tall Tales. So good call. But, you know, I really encourage you guys that have these, you people, you folks, you ladies and gentlemen, et cetera, that have these witty comments, come on the line and share them. And if you want to call up and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, you know, that's zero on the list. That's fair game. So going back here to Jeff Flakey, the senator from Arizona, he said that no one took the trouble to identify the two people that cornered Jeff Flakey in the elevator. And here's some news on that. Their names were Anna Maria Archila and Maria Gallagher. They were the two women who confronted Flake inside the elevator. Perhaps because they expressed such raw emotion, few media outlets dug into their political activism. Archila is an executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy. She had spent the previous week in Washington engaged in protests against Kavanaugh. Gallagher is a 23-year-old activist with the group. The center is a left-wing group heavily funded by George Soros Open Society Foundations. Indeed, as of 2014, Open Society, George Soros' gang, was one of the three largest contributors to the group. Make no mistake, the Center for Popular Democracy is at the heart of the effort to stop Kavanaugh. A source forwarded to me an email sent from the organization which said, quote, "Last week you saw protesters interrupting the Kavanaugh hearing, trying to slow it down and show the Judiciary Committee how much we care. These protests were organized by the Women's March and the Center for Popular Democracy and other groups." So this article that I have here that has a picture of, if you haven't seen his picture, has a picture of Jeff Flakey on the front of the article, goes into some detail about these women. So the mainstream media reported this as, you know, just two women who were very emotional, perhaps overcome by emotion, and took the opportunity when they saw Jeff Flakey in the elevator to accost him. But I don't think that's exactly what happened. They're from the George Soros-backed group, and I think most of our international radio listening audience recognizes who George Soros is. If not, someday we'll have a little teachable moment about George Soros. So it's a very radical, far-left group. This wasn't accidental. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they cornered Jeff Flakey in the elevator, and it worked. Because after he was cornered, he flip-flopped. He was a flake, a snowflake. Shows you how much courage he had in his own convictions. So that goes back to what I was saying yesterday, that my prediction is that Kavanaugh will not be confirmed because the left, which means most of the Democrats, are so committed to stopping Kavanaugh to preserve their constitutional amendment in favor of abortion that they'll use whatever means necessary just to stop it, no matter what the consequences are to any of the people involved. Kavanaugh and his family will be collateral damage. My prediction is that by the time it's all over, Kavanaugh is probably going to be an Uber driver in D.C. because he will be almost literally run out of town by this gang who won't be satisfied with just stopping his confirmation. They'll have to completely destroy him. So the article that I just read identifying those two people, I think just feeds into my analysis. Tom Poole said that on the strength of my analysis, he has $100 on the line. You might want to increase your bet just a little bit, Tom. It's not good news at all for those of us who believe that the Constitution yeah, it is, Don Ed Quilani. Yeah. Yeah, we've got some here. Yeah, Don Ed Quilani says, comes up with Living Invertebrates with Vicky Peirce, John Pierce, Mildred Buxbaum, etc. And the title of the book that I want to send to Jeff Flakey is called Animals Without Backbones. Do you get it, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. So why is Bob going to buy an old book? The original was 1939. I guess it was updated in 1987. Why does Bob want to buy an old book by a guy named Ralph Buxbaum and send it to Jeff Flakey? And the answer is because the title of the book is Animals Without Backbones. Maybe he can find some kindred ideas in there, given his performance in D.C. As kind of the honorary elevator operator there at the Capitol. And I think the sarcasm light is turned on here in the studio. While I'm being sarcastic, we don't have a voting delegate in Congress. We have a non-voting delegate. We don't have anybody in the Senate at all. And I read an article the other day about D.C. has a shadow congressional delegation. They elect 2 senators and a representative, and they perform as though they were senators and representatives. Of course, they're not, but it's the way the District of Columbia is making a point by having this shadow congressional delegation. So I was thinking maybe we ought to think in the same terms, kind of borrowing a page from Neil Weir's book, which we'll get to later on in the card. But that'd be pretty expensive, for us to have those 3 people on some kind of a payroll, really, when we're so far from D.C. If you live in D.C., it's a pretty easy gig to pull off. So I thought, failing that, maybe what we could do would be to have our own elevator squad so that when important matters come before the Senate, matters that are important to us, we could dispatch our elevator squad and attempt to corner important members of the Senate in an elevator and holler at them, hoping that they would then see things our way, citing the matter of Jeff Flake for authority. Now, another call that ended abruptly, right? Real Joe?
They're going to call back because they know that we're going on a break.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I need to talk to somebody here other than myself and the Real Joe Cruz, who actually asked for he submitted a request for a waiver of appearance here today, like Ray Tenorio, but it was turned down. So short break, and then we'll be right back at it.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Compounding a disaster. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A volcano has erupted on the central Indonesian island of Sulawesi. That's the same island where a 7.5 magnitude earthquake and a giant tsunami wave struck last Friday. Mount Soputan is hundreds of miles away from Palu, the area hardest hit last week, but an ash cloud towers some 20,000 feet in the air, posing a threat to aircraft, including those bringing aid to earthquake survivors. The number of victims from the earthquake and tsunami just updated by the Indonesian government. It now stands at 1,407. At a campaign rally Tuesday night in Mississippi, President Trump again assailing Democrat efforts to derail the confirmation of his Supreme Court nominee, Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
All of the Democrats know, and all they really know how to do is obstruct, resist, demolish, destroy, and delay.
Fox News has learned the FBI's supplemental background check on Judge Kavanaugh could be completed by later today, which could lead to a confirmation vote as early as Saturday. A published report suggests President Trump and members of his family benefited from questionable tax practices in receiving portions of his late father's estate.
The lengthy New York Times report claims that the president received at least $413 million in today's money from his father's New York real estate business, with much of that money, the Times says, coming through questionable tax schemes in the 1990s. According to confidential tax returns and financial records obtained by the Times, the president and his family set up a phony corporation in an effort to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents.
Fox's John Decker reports an attorney representing the president says the story is 100% false. No joy in Chicago. The Cubs are out of baseball's postseason, losing the National League wildcard game 2-1 in 13 innings to the Colorado Rockies. Fox News, fair and balanced.
Taste the sizzle at Chili's with our new fajita flavors. Our signature fajitas are served with sliced bell peppers, caramelized onions, topped with chipotle garlic butter, and chopped cilantro. Build your fajita with over 16 ounces of tender grilled chicken, juicy steak, and a dozen pieces of seasoned grilled shrimp in the family fajita trio. All served with warm flour tortillas and fresh toppings like mixed cheese, guacamole, salsa, and pico de gallo. Experience bold, sizzling fajita flavors only at Chili's. More life happens here.
We're surrounded by sound. There are sounds that you need to hear. There are sounds that you want to hear. And there are sounds that you long to hear.
I love you.
Hear it all, louder and clearer than ever before. If you or someone you know has a hard time hearing, Guam Hearing Doctors can help, using state-of-the-art test gear to evaluate your hearing and coming up with a plan to make your life better by making your hearing better. Call Guam Hearing Doctors for an appointment or visit them on the web at guamhearingdoctors.com.
Your cell phone will likely make an urgent-sounding noise later this afternoon. It's a test of a new alert system.
This afternoon at 2:18 Eastern Time, you'll get a test emergency message on your mobile device. It'll have a loud tone and vibration, and it's a nationwide test of the wireless emergency alert system and the emergency alert system. It's being done by FEMA and the FCC. The wireless alerts were already being used to warn the public of dangerous weather, missing children, and other critical situations. Now they will also include presidential alerts, and users cannot opt out of those. The test was originally planned for September 20th, but was postponed due to response efforts to Hurricane Florence. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
With an inmate set to be executed next week, Tennessee's Supreme Court will hear arguments later today about the constitutionality of the state's lethal injection method. It's a lawsuit filed by more than 24 death row inmates who claim the state's three-drug method of lethal injection could potentially cause them severe pain and suffering. We're getting the first looks at the old Roseanne show without its namesake.
The first teaser for The Connors was dropped, and it features the family getting ready for the holidays in a world without Roseanne.
I thought we should talk about a game plan for Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
I say we follow the Connor tradition, spend every dime we have on Halloween, and then we have nothing to be thankful for or by gifts with.
There's no mention of the former star who was fired following racial comments she made about former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett. The network ordered 10 episodes of The Connors with the entire cast back in their key roles. Roseanne's character reportedly died in the new series. The Connors premieres October 16th. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
Asian stocks closing Wednesday mixed. Dow futures are up nearly 60 points. The day after the Dow set a new record high. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News Radio.
Always here to help you. This island is our home.
Life is too short to be isolated from the people you love. Hearing loss is the invisible disability. The experts at Guam Hearing Doctors have solutions.
Grilled salmon, petite sirloin. Can't decide.
What are you doing?
Making my top 10 list of favorite dishes at Ruby Tuesday.
You really need to get a hobby.
But I can't decide. There's no way I can narrow down so many classic dishes to just 10.
Then it's a good thing Ruby Tuesday did it for you.
It's the all-time favorites menu at Ruby Tuesday Guam. We took our most popular dishes and put them on one great menu for only $14.99. Hickory pork chop, Parmesan shrimp pasta, prime loco moco. 10 top sellers at one great price. Pick your favorite for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
The Bob Klitsky Show is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Calvo started with a simple handshake. As we celebrate 80 years, we extend a hand to all of you who have taken our hand in trust, to the dreamers and realists, the families, the businesses, the young at heart, and the old souls, our manumku and our children. From all of us to all of you, our deepest, happiest, and infinite thanks.
80 years here for you. 80 years thanks to you. Calvo's Insurance, a legacy of trust.
So, another big halftime show on Tall Tales, the marching bands, the cheerleaders, the acrobats, the synchronized card section. It doesn't get much better than that, does it? So, I want to go back to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. I've got a choice to make here between ex-GPD administrative worker Ovita Nauta and the Land Trust. And then I've also got Hills versus Weir, another one of Neil Weir's schemes that Howard Hill so thoroughly debunked. Maybe I'll work on, because it's different, ex-GPD administrative worker Ovita Nauta pleads guilty. And I'm going to hang. Before I start that, I'm going to pick up Mark, who's just called in. Afternoon, Mark.
Hey, Senator, how you doing?
Pretty good.
God, something that's been kind of gnawing at me with this whole Kavanaugh situation, and I've been wondering. Nobody seems to have raised a couple questions that I've had or thought about. The first one. He was a district judge. He was confirmed by the Senate. Why wasn't there anything brought up then? Secondly, he's on the Second Court of Appeals. You know, some say the most powerful court of appeals. Why wasn't this brought up then? There was two bites at the apple to have him, I guess, scrutinized, vilified, however it's going down, that he was not fit to be a federal jurist. Only when it became now that he was going to be a potential justice on the Supreme Court, the wolves are at his ankles.
You're absolutely right, Mark. And he has been through the FBI background investigation 6 times. Once for his appointment to the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, which is the second most important court in the country. Once for the Supreme Court, and then 4 different times for his positions with the administration. He was a lawyer that worked for...
okay, he wasn't a district judge. Okay, then mine. Okay, I was trying to look that up. Okay, so where was all these people with all these allegations? What, you're fine with him being this horrible individual, being on a court of appeals for life? If it was so dastardly, why weren't you speaking up then? And nobody out of the national media seems to be bringing that question up.
It's very true, and of course, you know, if you are a conservative, one of the beliefs that you would be exposed to is that the media is so liberal that they're only going to report the mainstream media. They're only going to report stuff that's favorable to their own desires, and of course, their own desires is way out on the left, and they don't want to see the Constitution amended back to allow for the criminalization of abortion either. So it's all really kind of part of the same phenomenon, perhaps.
I guess, you know, that's a whole other topic. Media, you know, what I want the media to do is report the facts. If I want your opinion, I'll go to the editorial page, or I'll listen to the editorial, report the facts, and allow me to make my own judgment. I don't need you making judgments for me on any media level. Report the facts, let me make my judgments.
And if you're interested in editorialization, you can always tune into Tall Tales, right, Mark?
You got it. But, yeah, this thing with Kavanaugh, why weren't they biting at the apple when he was nominated for the Court of Appeals?
And along the same lines, why did Di-Fi, who got the letter back in July, why did she hang on to it until after the hearing was concluded? The answer is the same for all of the questions. You know what I mean?
Oh, I understand. But, and I tell you, I can understand, having watched much of his comments at the hearing. I mean, you push a person to the edge of the cliff, they're going to respond in kind. They're going to respond, and to say it's not it's not very judicial. Well, you've slammed this man so bad, he's got to respond, and he responded in any way that anybody would that was under those kind of circumstances.
It kind of reminded me of Law and Order, where if you've ever watched Law and Order, Jack McCoy sometimes has figured out how to get to a witness, and he provokes the witness into demonstrating the conduct on the witness stand that he's accused of in the trial. And I think that was clearly the Democrats' aim. We will assassinate this guy's character and his family, and everybody else will go back to his high school yearbook, and we'll do everything that we can to put him in a bad light, hoping that he might speak back with a little bit of emotion, which is exactly what he did.
And can you blame the man?
Can't blame him.
Well, I like I said, I wish the media would kind of take, at least somebody in the media would take the approach of where was all of this on the appeals court nomination.
Exactly. Good point, Mark.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for calling in with that. So, yeah, it just goes on and on. And it goes back to what I was talking about yesterday, by any means necessary. The Democrats are so tied up into this whole abortion question that my sense is, and I will say that either consciously or subconsciously, they have convinced themselves that their cause is so just that they can do anything, whatever, to achieve the ends that they think are so just. And by doing that, they're taking a page right out of the Communist Party playbook, and also from the gang called the neo-Marxists. And you start out with the idea that there is oppression, and the oppression is so severe that the oppressed don't have any chance of getting out from under the oppression by playing by the rules, because the oppressor makes the rules, and the game is so stacked against them that they can't comply with the rules. And that seems to be what the left, the Democrats, are doing here. Any sense of fair play or listening or accommodation or whatever, it's not necessary, because they're so sure they're right. And that's why I keep coming back to Mazie Hirono, who at least is honest. She told us there was no subconscious there. She came right out and said it. I don't think he's entitled to a, quote, fair hearing, because I've examined his record and his position on women's reproductive rights. So I don't care what he says. How could he possibly be telling the truth? And even if he is, why does it matter? And that's the Democrats' approach here. And like Mark says, anyone with some journalistic integrity would ask questions like, well, he's been through federal FBI background checks 6 times, and nothing turned up then. So, of course, now we have to have the 7th time, and the reason for the 7th time is just to drag it out. You know, if you basketball fans, back before the days of the 24-second clock, there were occasions where a team would have a good shooting streak and achieve a lead that was a surprise to everyone, including themselves, that they played way above their heads. And when this happens, what you would see then would be a stall, that from then on, when that team that had the lucky streak that they knew they couldn't maintain through the end of the game, when they got the ball, they would play possession ball. They wouldn't shoot. They would just keep dribbling around and run the clock out to hang on to that lead that they had. So that isn't exactly what the Democrats are doing, but it's pretty close. They're stalling. They're stalling because the longer they can drag it out, the more time they have to go out and beat the bushes and find some other crackpot who will come in and spin some story that would give them another reason to stall. So the whole thing, Flake caving in on the FBI, it was so predictable. He'd cave in on the FBI, and the next words out of their mouths was, yeah, but it's not long enough. It's got to be more thorough. You can't do it in a week. And if the time frame had been in a month, you can't do it in a month. It's got to be more. It's got to be more in depth, etc. So he played right into their hands. And my prediction was based on the fact that the Republicans just don't have the strength to bear up against this amoral group on the left who will use by any means necessary to make sure that Kavanaugh doesn't get on the Supreme Court, because they'll do anything they can to protect that abortion plank of their creed, so to speak. So good call, Mark. I think you're right on the button there. And what is going to happen is that Kavanaugh is not going to be confirmed, I'm afraid, and maybe if he's really lucky, he could get a job as an elevator operator at the Capitol. But let me ask Daryl for his views on this subject. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, you know, Bob, I was calling because I really don't agree with you there. It's not. It is playing by the rules. The rules of the U.S. Senate haven't changed, and it's all politics. It's whether the Democrats can bring enough pressure to bear on the Republican candidates that are up for re-election during this particular year, because only a third of them are up for election every 2 years. And they were able to find a way to get under an issue, not a character assassination, but an issue that would get under the nails of the senators who are hoping for re-election. And they're caught between, those senators are caught between their donors, the people that they've been squeezing money out for re-election campaigns for the last 2, 4 years, 6 years, and their electorate. You know, whoever's going to vote them back in. And this issue happens to be one, because we're in the era of Me Too, it happens to be one that, even though it's beyond statute of limitations, has nothing to do with judiciary, with breaking the law. You know, even if he was 17, all you had to do was say, I was 17, I was stupid as shit back then, I am much wiser now. But he didn't. He dug his heels in. And so he got burned. He could have gotten past it with a mea culpa. He could have done a, I want reconciliation with this poor woman. I didn't know that she was scarred for life. And he would have become he would have maintained his judicial bearing. But no, he didn't. He became political. He played right into the Democrats' hand. And I've been watching this going on, and I hate to see a good man go down. But he came in as he was touted as the latest greatest thing that was going to make sure that the Republican or the Trump agenda was going to be perpetuated at the Supreme Court level for the next 30 years, and the Democrats rose to the challenge, and they came at him with what they had, and they came at him within the political game. If there's no votes there, if he doesn't have 51 votes or 50 votes, 51 votes, well, then he's not going to go in, and the president's going to have to nominate somebody else, and hopefully they will say this is a person with good judicial temperament, and we think that he or she is going to be acceptable to a majority of the Senate, and here's the background, and they're going to run at it again, but they're not going to be so damn doctrinaire.
I agree with an awful lot of what you say, Daryl, and my use of the word rules was inappropriate because the rules are whatever you can get away with in that political dogfight, no question.
Oh, yeah, and that's what happened last year or 2 years ago when Obama nominated and his nominee sat on the shelf for 10 months. And that was by the politics and by the rules, and so be it. That's what happened. So it's like turnabout is fair play. That's the rules.
Yeah, well, as I say, I misuse the word rules because the rules are that there are no rules. And I also on this program opine that by exhibiting the temperament that he did during his testimony, he gave the Democrats a gift, because that was not that was not
absolutely. He could have played this so much better.
Yeah, let me continue. That was not judicial temperament, and for me, that's probably more important than what I think were the scurrilous accusations of Dr. Ford. The place I disagree with you is here, and that is that Kavanaugh's mea culpa might have saved his appointment. I don't think his mea culpa would have saved his appointment, because appealing to his own youth and lack of good judgment would have, in accordance with the, quote, rules that were in operation, would have sunk him farther. And then the second thing that I would have to say is that my judgment is that he didn't do what she has accused him of doing. I think that she is perhaps a step above the elevator screamers, but I think she's an operative of that whole leftist movement that's designed to work out his confirmation. Other than that, I agree with what you're saying, Daryl.
There's something to that. You know, she is a professor of psychology. So do you think that they could have picked a better person to go in and play the part?
Well, I'd say this. As a witness, she appeared to be very well coached. She would be a lawyer's dream as far as a way a witness could conduct herself, but there's nothing to back up. The only thing that she had going for her was her demeanor. And a good actor can provide whatever demeanor you're looking for. She's not an actress, but all the rest of the details she didn't remember, she didn't know, she forgot, on and on and on. So all of the rest of the stuff that would be the foundation for her testimony wasn't there.
So you're right. If you could get somebody better than an actor, it would be a psychology professor.
Probably, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a difference, Daryl.
It's just where we are in the world today. That's just kind of what's going on in this month and year, in the year of our Lord.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right on the button there. I find myself agreeing with you again, Daryl. And that's why my prediction that he won't be confirmed, because the Republicans haven't woken up yet. They don't understand that they're out on the football field and that they can't complain about somebody out there.
Go ahead.
Was that your watch?
No, I'm picking my dad up.
Oh, okay.
And I'm getting in the car. I just loaded him up. I couldn't wait to call you. I really had. I hear you all the time. It's a time when I have to go get my dad, and so I'm not able to text in or sign in online. But I'm able to hear you on the radio. And I just enjoy the hell out of your show. I really, really enjoy it immensely. I appreciate it, even if I don't agree with you. I really appreciate your perspective and the perspective that you share with listeners to help everyone just get back down to a footing of read the statute, and also principle. And so I really want to commend you on this. And if you don't hear from me much, don't worry, I am here. I am listening because I love your show. You're on at a time of day when I'm busy. I have to move, and usually the only way I can really contact you is on phone. Not.
Is your dad in the car now, Daryl?
Mm-hmm.
Is your dad in the car now?
I'm in the car now.
Is your dad?
Yeah, he's here.
Okay, well, if you're on speakerphone, I'm going to say, "Hi, Bill. How you doing?"
Well, hang on. Let me. I don't get feedback here. Okay, you can say it again.
Hey, Bill. How you doing?
He nods and he's smiling.
Okay.
I have to turn off my radio because when I have it on, it kind of gets into my microphone and back to you, and it goes into kind of a...
Okay, what you're going to have to do, what you got to do now, Daryl, is you got to pull over and take the 7th inning stretch, okay?
Yep. It is that time. I see it on my clock.
Thanks for calling.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Bob, for being there.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Yesterday, we began to discuss the winning mindset needed by effective bosses. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, let's talk again about 12 things that good bosses believe.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
Yeah, so here we are, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field. I understand that the Cubs lost to the Braves yesterday. Excuse me, the Braves. The Brewers. Yeah, the Braves. I still haven't approved the Braves transfer from Milwaukee to Atlanta, so you'll have to go along with me on that one. But anyhow, seventh inning stretch reminds us all that we play hardball here on Tall Tales, and that we do like baseball, and we still recognize Wrigley Field as the world's most beautiful ballpark. So I've got CLTC and their latest exercises in futility, and then I've got the story about ex-GPD administrative worker Ovita Nauta pleads guilty. So the CLTC story, what I did on the CLTC story is I went back and dug up some of the news stories and quotations from when the CLT scandal first began, and I'm going to compare those to the stupidity that they're entering into now, which is to just say, well, yeah, we made a mistake, so it's all okay. In effect, giving people that they know did some really bad things a pass. So I think I'll hold that off until tomorrow and start out with ex-GPD administrative worker Ovita Nauta. And I've got the Daily News story here. And the Daily News points this out at the beginning of the story. Just because a person was arrested, it does not automatically mean they are guilty. And, of course, I've got to edit that a little bit. Just because a person was arrested, it does not mean they're automatically guilty unless they are nominees for the Supreme Court of the United States. Then they don't even need to be arrested. Enough of that. Going on with this story in the PDN. A woman who used to work for the police department as an administrative service officer and who was charged with theft pleaded guilty on Tuesday to issuance of a dishonored check and official misconduct, both as misdemeanors, according to her attorney. Ovita Nauta was indicted in January on theft of property as a second-degree felony, theft of property held in trust as a second-degree felony, issuance of a dishonored check as a third-degree felony, and official misconduct as a misdemeanor. Nauta pleaded guilty as part of a plea agreement. As part of that plea deal, the felony charges against her were dismissed. Nauta was sentenced to a year in prison with all that time suspended and 2 years probation. She must also pay $7,650 in restitution. According to the indictment, in June of 2015, she issued a bad check for an amount of $1,000 while she worked at GPD. Now, I wish they would have, this story would have given us more details of what she was charged with, because it sounds a lot more heavy-duty than that. Second-degree felony, theft of property held in trust, official misconduct, etc. At the time Nauta was indicted, she was working as an administrative officer for the Department of Corrections. Nauta was hired at DOC in 2016. DOC Director Lamarena confirmed that Nauta still works at the prison. And here's a quote from Lamarena. "She's done a fantastic job at DOC," Lamarena said. Lamarena said the charges Nauta faced happened at a different department, and he said he didn't think it warranted her being punished at DOC because she's done a fine job since working there. He said Nauta was convicted of misdemeanors, but if she was convicted of felonies, it would have been a different story. So Okay, so I got Jimmy on the line. Okay, I'm going to stop with Ovita Nauta here, and I'm going to see what Jimmy. How are you doing?
Oh, not so good. I've been trying to get through to Tumon Precinct, Guam Police Department. I'm calling about case number 2018-22954. The date was August 9th, 2018. Classification's theft. And I saw the person that stole my stuff. It adds up to almost $1,000 worth.
Uh-huh.
And I called the number on the back of the, on the front of the card, 475-8506. They put me on a recording, nothing. Then I called 911. They transferred me to Tumon Precinct. They put me on hold, nothing. So if you could find anyone to talk to the GPD about the person that stole my stuff. He's in the Circle K, right across from Pacific Place, right on Hotel Road. He's got no shirt on. He's wearing Stars and Stripes shorts. I don't know his name. Don't know his ethnicity. But I do know he's a thief.
Okay.
And I can't get through to the police. I don't ask them to serve me, but I would like a little protection.
And you're not getting a satisfactory response from the police, is that it?
Yeah, you try yourself. You try to get through to my precinct right now. Tell them that case number, 2018-23954. The thief is in Circle K. Well, he was at 5:30. The thief is in Circle K right now.
He's at the Circle K right now?
Yeah, well, he was at 5:30.
So does he work there?
No, he just comes in there and steals.
I see.
Steals and begs, stands outside and begs, and steals, goes to where I live and steals.
And no response from the cops, huh?
None whatsoever. Again.
Mm. Have you've called, have you actually gone to, what village are we talking about, Tumuning?
Tumon.
Tumon. Have you actually gone to the
Pacific Place, Outback Steakhouse?
Uh-huh.
The Circle K right across the road from Pacific Place and Outback Steakhouse.
Well, let me just ask you a few questions. Have you taken a picture of the guy?
No, because look, I'm 67 years old and I weigh 115 pounds. This guy's like about 6'3". And
he's a big guy, huh?
Bigger than me, much bigger than me.
Have you actually gone down to the Tumon police station? And
no, this happened at 5:30. And then I was on hold with the Tumon Precinct. That's where the Blue House boys used to work, and that's where they anyway.
Uh-huh.
Goes right along with this thing about the lady that Ovita
Nauta, yeah. Uh-huh.
Dirty and corrupt and inefficient and just wrong. Is this the Philippines or is this Guam, USA?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Jimmy. I would only be able to suggest that you might want to make a personal visit to the Tumon police station and perhaps...
I went there to file the report.
Yeah, well, I understand what you're saying, and I kind of feel for your frustration.
But anyway, my 2 cents is someone needs to, a new blue food screen or get rid of the corruption or, the words fail me. It's just so dirty and so corrupt. And it's not just GPD. Okay, La Morena, how many drugs get busted in the prison? But where does the buck stop?
I hear what you're saying, Jimmy.
Anyway, you're going to be where you're afraid to walk on the street. Okay, I carry around a little tear gas thing in my pocket. Every time I see certain people, I put my hand in my pocket and get it ready to pull out and shoot. Or spray, not shoot, spray.
Yeah. Okay, well,
I've only used it once, but you can't walk on the streets. You can't be safe in your home. Home invasions, you read the newspaper.
Right.
Again, I ask, is this the Philippines or is this Guam, USA?
I get your point, Jimmy. Perhaps you could...
I'll send you some email with documentation.
What did you say?
I'll send you an email with documentation.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, Jimmy.
Anyway, thanks for your time, but if you could get through to Tumon Precinct, good luck, and ask them to go to Circle K just across the road from Outback Steakhouse, Pacific Place. Or look for a guy walking up and down the street with Stars and Stripes, big guy, Stars and Stripes shorts on and no shirt.
I see.
And maybe drunk, or maybe he's got warrants, I don't know.
Okay, Jimmy. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for your time. Yes, sir. Please continue about the administrator keeping her job after a guilty plea.
I'll do it. Thanks again.
I interrupt you. Sorry.
So I got something pretty interesting here that from Tom Poole that I'm going to read before I go back to Ovita Nauta. If we recall our Sunday school training, Joseph of the coat of many colors was the loyal servant of a very wealthy man. His bored wife tried to get Joseph to commit adultery with her. Joseph refused and pled. In her rage, she accused him of attempted rape. Joseph was thrown in prison, ostensibly for life. This business of always believing the victim goes a long way back. That's an interesting point, Tom, going to the Old Testament for your point. Fortunately for Joseph, the story had a happy ending, and we can only hope for as much for Brett Kavanaugh. But, interesting point, Tom. So back to administrator keeps her job, Ovita. So she was indicted at the time that she was working at the Department of Corrections. So my recollection of the rules for adverse action is that that perhaps is sufficient for discipline. I got to go back and check the rules on that. But there's one rule that I'm really sure of, and that is at 4GCA 4201, and it's titled Duty to Report Criminal Charges or Convictions. An employee in the classified service who is charged by indictment, information, or magistrate's complaint with any crime in any court or was convicted of a crime in any court except traffic court shall provide the head of the department or agency employing the victim with written notice of the charges of conviction within 72 hours thereof. And then 4202.2, failure to report criminal charges. Failure to provide the notice required by 4GCA 4202.1 is grounds for a separate adverse action. And B, the 60-day limitation imposed by Title 4 GCA Section 4406 commences when the employee gives notice of the charges or conviction of a crime to the head of the department or agency as required. So if Ovita Nauta was indicted during the time that she was working at the Department of Corrections, the law required her to give a notice of that indictment to the Director of Corrections. And again, being charged with a crime gives rise to a cause for investigation, even if the person were working at a different agency at the time. So if the Director of Corrections, Tony Lamarena, were going to take action, he could have taken action, perhaps, at the time of the indictment. He didn't have to wait for the plea. And, of course, at the time of the indictment, we were dealing with a felony indictment. So it appears that when this happened, if Ovita Nauta gave him the necessary notice, he just ignored it and let it go. And let her continue to stay on the job, even though she had been indicted for felony charges, including official misconduct, until it comes down to the time when she is actually she pleads and is sentenced. So I suppose we could look at this on the bright side, that she owes us $7,650 in restitution. Since she's working at DEPCOR, I suppose that her restitution could be in the form of a payroll deduction. What do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
Well, that's a possibility.
Yeah. And, of course, the real challenge at the Department of Corrections is that we've seen corrections officers wind up behind bars themselves. So there's just so much room here for sarcasm that I think I'm going to turn the sarcasm light off for the moment. But this whole thing, as the host of the morning show, the Ray Gibson show, would say, it's fishy. The whole thing is fishy. How was she able to stay on the job after a felony indictment? And now, how is it that the director says he didn't think it warranted her being punished because she's done a fine job since working here? I'm going to put that one aside until tomorrow. We're going to be heading down the home stretch, and I'm going to try something a little different here. I'm going to try to do a little social commentary during the last 10 minutes of the program, and I've got an article here called Great Awakening.
The Westin Resort Guam is excited to announce the return of Hansik at Taste. Experience the elegance of Korean cuisine throughout the years, infused with a modern Chinese twist. Their guest chefs from Korea will take you on an extraordinary culinary voyage. $36 for adults and $18 for children 6 to 11. From October 8th to the 13th. Come and enjoy the taste of Hansik Korean lunch buffet from 11:30 to 2:30 at Taste. Call the Westin Guam Resort for reservations at 647-1020.
So here we are on the home stretch of Tall Tales. We've got about 10 minutes till I begin to hear the faithful strains of Ravel's Bolero in the background, telling me that it's time to wrap it up for another great day here on Tall Tales. Semper Fi, Albert. Glad you could join us. So I have an article in front of me here called Great Awakening. And the word awakening is something that is at least it's brand new to me. So that people nowadays, especially younger folks, use the word woke in a way that I am not familiar with. I don't even know that there is such a word as woke, W-O-K-E, but people use it as an adjective. Yeah, he's really woke is the way it can be used. So awakening doesn't make a whole lot of a sense. Awakening, yeah, I can go along with that. I understand what that means. But I'm really really kind of bound up in this correct use of the language, and I like to see words used the way they're supposed to be used. For me, to hear someone use the word they as a third person singular, I'd rather sit around and listen to the real Joe Cruz scratch his fingernails over a blackboard than what you see all of the time. If a person is interested in television, they should not watch it too much. Well, a person is not they. A person could be he, or it could be she, or it could be he or she. But a person is not they. And I hear this all the time. And as I say, I'm perhaps too hung up on proper use of words. So when I see something like the Great Awakening, it caused me to wonder what's going on here. But Ben, this comes from an email service called Patheos, or Patheos. Bo and Ben Weingart analyzed today's Great Awakening as a religious movement. They deploy the categories of sacredness and purity, priestly privilege, sin, atonement, and absolution to explain wokeness, W-O-K-E-N-E-S, wokeness, as a religious movement and a status symbol. They admit that that many of their moral concerns are entirely legitimate, and it goes on like that. And then it goes down, in some, wokeness is a status system that functions predominantly to distinguish white elites from the white masses, whom we will call hoi polloi. I suppose that's those folks that are hung up on their Bibles and their guns and things that Hillary and Barack Obama had such a hard time with. But anyhow, wokeness provides a rich signaling vocabulary for traits and possessions such as education, intelligence, openness, leisure, wealth, and cosmopolitanism, all of which educated whites value. Preachers in the Great Awakening obtain status because they, A, signal a possession of desired traits, B, promulgate a powerful narrative that legitimizes the status disparity between white elites and the hoi polloi. The woke are morally righteous and therefore deserve status, whereas hoi polloi are morally backward and deserve obloquy and derision. The authors summarize the woke faith in 5 propositions, and this is really the important part of this piece that has taken me a little bit longer to get to. Daryl says, they is the correct singular third person in this day of indeterminate or nebulous sexual self-identification. Maybe that's why I object to it so much, Daryl. Maybe you hit the nail right on the head. So they summarize the woke faith in 5 propositions. 1, all demographic groups are roughly biologically the same. 2, bigotry is pervasive. 3, almost all disparities among demographic groups are caused by bigotry. 4, if we all work really hard, we can create a more just, multicultural society. 5, diversity is almost always a good thing. Number 2 is key, a universal explanation. If you think that disparities might have causes other than bigotry, you're a bigot. If you think there might be downsides to certain kinds of diversity, you're a bigot. If you think that some humans are biologically, here we go, Daryl. If you think that some humans are biologically male and others biologically female, or study brain differences between the sexes, you're a bigot. And I would add into this, if you abhor the use of the third person, if you abhor the use of the word they for the third person singular, you're a bigot, right, Daryl? Just think of the general, as you were. These tenets are linked to a sacred narrative about the victimization of certain groups. Members of these groups are to be considered the innocent victims of oppressive and iniquitous patriarchy. Whites, on the other hand, are born burdened with the original sin of privilege and are therefore presumptively complicit in the system unless they declare their fidelity to wokeness. So in other words, if you happen to be of the pale persuasion, then you've got to embrace those 5 items mentioned above. That's your only salvation. Those who belonging is signaled by language. Those who preach its gospel often use bizarre concepts imported from postmodern theorists, infamous for their impenetrable prose. Terms such as hegemonic, intersectional, phallocentric, that's a good one, and queerphobe are regularly deployed, intimidating the uninitiated and impressing those who wish in the future to signal their erudition to fawning fans. This jargon confers status because it doesn't come easily. One has to learn the lingo, and those who do earn status. Understanding wokeness as a status symbol, as you were a status system, explains some of the oddities of the movement. Challenges to the tenets of wokeness aren't taken as invitations to debate. So if you challenge some of the things that I mentioned earlier, those are not invitations but occasions for denunciation and dismissal. Some woke tactics seem to work against the ostensible goal of awakening others. Why denounce instead of trying to persuade? Why send status signals instead of working quietly to improve the lives of victims of justice? One reason is that those who are woke don't really want to inhabit an entirely woke world without the bigoted masses. Without the dark side, there is no opportunity for light. Treating woke vocabulary as quasi-sacrament of identity and inclusion also helps explain the trajectory of accusations. The more ridiculous the accusation, the better the signal. Wokeness is marked by concept creep, in which those vying for status among the woke complete to call out vanishingly trivial offenses and imagine slights as intolerable manifestations of racism, sexism, and patriarchal oppression. I'll come back to this tomorrow and kind of restate it in a little bit less high-flown language. So that's it for today. Adios. Esta Gupa.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The FBI report on Judge Kavanaugh may be done today. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A source